Blessed All Souls Day, everybody, and Tony here with my review of Wagner Der Fliegende Holländer with conductor Ivan Repusic, which I saw at the Deutsche Oper Berlin. This marks the third time I saw this production of Der Fliegende Holländer by Christian Spuck at the Deutsche Oper Berlin because I wanted to see and hear Jordan Shanahan perform the titular hero. I did mention in my earlier video review of Mozart's Die Zauberflöte starring Lilith Daftian that I was going to also talk about Elisabeth Teige as Zenta, but I will definitely talk about her much later in this review. But before I get to talking about Jordan Shanahan as the Dutchman, a few words about Tobias Kira as Dalland. He is no stranger to this role, considering that he has been performing as this captain in many of the opera houses around the world, especially in his native Deutsche Oper Berlin. I definitely loved the timbre of his voice as it grew in richness, darkness, depth, and cavernousness, which are the great attributes needed for Dalland. I have loved him ever since I've been watching him as Sarastro, and Dalland is yet another great role that he has been specializing in for many years, all thanks to not only that richness and darkness that he was able to emit with his voice, but also that virility that he was able to emit, as well as that gruff yet lovable father figure element that he was able to embody so exceedingly well. I still miss that extra darkness and extra depth that I love in bassos such as Gottlob Frick, Kurt Böhme, and Josef Greindl, but that is just mere nitpicking because I still thoroughly enjoy Tobias Kira's gruff yet extremely charismatic Dalland, so he deserves a lot of A-pluses all around. Now we get to Jordan Shanahan as the Dutchman. I have been watching this Heldenbariton grow from strength to strength. Ever since I read his biography, I recognized that he started out as a more cavalier bariton in roles such as Posa, but he found his true calling in the more dramatic baritone parts, whether they be Johanna Ann, or Klingsor, or even Albrecht, or even the Dutchman. He certainly found his path, and how his voice grew in depth, richness, and pathos managed to make me thoroughly at the edge of my seat every time he was on stage. And it's not just that darkness and depth that he was able to emit, but also that mysterious virility and that angst that was also reflected in that nervous yet anxious, and the dichotomy between being fearful and being fearsome, all reflected in his Heldenbariton voice, that he was able to convey this character exceedingly well. Yes, there were occasions where he still sounded a bit throaty, but I could forgive that vocal flaw because Jordan Shanahan is one of the finest Heldenbaritons of today, and he has certainly found his calling in all of these big singing roles. I still miss that extra darkness, depth, richness, and cavernousness found in Ferdinand Franz, Hans Hotter, Franz Krass, and Hermann Ude, especially considering that these four bass baritones are tied for #1 favorite Dutchmans of all time, but I could still argue that Jordan Shanahan and the way that he was able to convey the Dutchman's angst, the Dutchman's virility, and that sense of mysterious fear managed to make me thoroughly involved in his performance. Even with his throatiness, I can still forgive that vocal flaw because he more than compensated whatever shortcomings he had and just went all guns blazing as the Dutchman, all thanks to his well-projected Heldenbariton voice, which he conveyed with nuance, hypnotically virile charm, and absolute wonder with every fiber of his being. So I seriously applaud Jordan Shanahan for his laudable portrayal of the Dutchman, both in a vocal sense and in a theatrical sense. Robert Watson struck again as Edic, and this was a role that he sang for nearly 7 years now. And compared to his performance in the same role 6 years ago, let alone his performance as Matteo nearly 8 months ago, Robert Watson's voice grew in a more baritonal tone. He sounded way rounder and richer than several months, let alone years ago. And his portrayal of Edic also grew in theatrical strength as well as in additional nuance in terms of his neurosis and in terms of his desperation and his overall paranoia of knowing that, yes, while the Dutchman might seem real, he feels like he's not real in his eyes, and Zenta is just hallucinating, as the Dutchman, at least according to him, is nothing more than a horrible nightmare to him, let alone a mere figment of her imagination, even though to Zenta, the Dutchman is real all along. And it's not just his theatrical prowess that made him stronger as Edic, but his vocal resources did grow in a little bit more chestiness, especially where his voice sounded a little bit more baritonal than it did months, let alone years ago. It had that additional roundness that I love in many Heldentenor tackling Edic. Yes, I still wish for that extra incision and extra beefiness found in Hans Beurer, Ludwig Suthaus, and Gunther Treptow, let alone Fritz Uhl, especially where Mr. Uhl's earthy tone is concerned. However, I still argue that Robert Watson managed to deliver the goods as Edic in terms of his overall great theatricality, as well as how much he was able to throw himself in this role with everything he's got. Matthew Newlin was a thoroughly athletic and thoroughly charismatic steersman, and it's all thanks to that signature full lyric tenor voice of his that I continue to love to this day. I've always stated that I love Matthew Newlin so much as a lyric tenor, and the steersman is a role perfectly more suitable for him than the likes of Don José. It's roles like the steersman, Fro, and maybe in a few years' time or next season, David, that are way more suitable for Matthew Newlin than Don José could ever be, because his lyric tenor voice is way more suitable to tackling these parts with finesse as well as with excitement, that he can let his voice out with a big ring. And of course, his voice did grow in strength. Perhaps it's his tenure as Don José that managed to make his vocal cords a lot more like steel when tackling the steersman. Moreover, he might have found a way to make his natural lyric tenor voice work for him in a Wagner role that is suitable for his voice, which he managed to do exceedingly well. And I definitely give him a lot of kudos for what he was able to accomplish as the steersman. While I do miss that extra body found in other tenors such as Waldemar Kment and Georg Pascuda, I could still give Matthew Newlin major credit for what he was able to accomplish as the steersman, and a whole lot of laudability in terms of combining his fine vocal prowess and his charismatic acting chops to make the steersman a role worth remembering. Lauren Decker definitely came into her own as Mari, the nurse, and I have seen this mezzo contralto grow from starting out as a player for minor roles such as Enriqueta from I Puritani 5 years ago, when I heard her in this role live streamed from the Lyric Opera of Chicago, to being a mainstay member of the Deutsche Oper Berlin tackling bigger roles, and Mari is one of the biggest roles that she has been tackling thus far. And she has sufficient richness to make this role work very well for her. She also commands a towering stage presence that is both mighty yet admirable to the women working for her. And this motherly attitude is also transferred to how she cares for Zenta. And it's not just this lovingly mother attitude that she has, but also a sternness that Lauren Decker possessed as Mari. Sure, her vocal prowess does need a little bit more work in terms of additional chestiness and making sure that her chest tones do not end up becoming lighter anytime soon, but really work on those chest tones so that she can grow into her own as a true mezzo-soprano / contralto. In fact, I could see her in roles like Clytemnestra from Electra, La Zia Principessa from Suor Angelica, Ulrika from Un ballo in maschera, Starenka Burlovka from Jenufa, and many of these great contralto roles necessary for a true, deep, and extra chesty contralto. Yes, there has no doubt been great Maris of the past, with my number one favorite being Res Fischer and another favorite being Elisabeth Scherpel, who were true contraltos with deep, dark, earthy, rich tones and equally chesty voices, especially in their glorious primes. But I'm sure that if Lauren Decker continues to work on her chest tones and make sure that she uses her chest voice well in every mezzo-soprano / contralto role she sings, she will grow stronger as a vocalist, and she will make sure that her voice can last for many years to come, because that is great material that she is working with. All she needs to do is keep on developing her chest tones in the right and proper way, and she will blossom into becoming a true contralto. Elisabeth Teige was quite exciting as Zenta, considering that she has been performing this role for quite some time. I first saw her as the title heroine of Turandot. Yes, I did find her performance in the role good, if not serviceable, because while I felt like she could be a lot more incisive with her top notes, let alone have a little bit more of a hochdramatische Sopran beefiness to Turandot, I thought that she was just really good in that role. Here, I thought she was much better as Zenta. First of all, she looked the part and did so with aplomb, beauty, grace, and elegance. She was able to portray Zenta's paranoia, anxiousness, nervousness, and occasional dreaminess that she has of the Dutchman. And of course, dealing with her own paranoia and anxiety of just not letting the image of the Dutchman go, because she is not only enamored with this visage of the Dutchman, but she also considers herself to be a savior to his life. She managed to portray that aspect about Zenta so convincingly that she managed to win me over with this performance. And vocally speaking, her top notes were exciting. Yes, the only thing working against her favor was that she had this caprino, which kind of sounded annoying, but at the same time, it managed to bring in Zenta's nervousness, anxiety, and paranoia every time she is on stage and every time she interacts with the characters around her, especially when she's excited to see the Dutchman and have him be her husband and her forever man. So Elisabeth Taige's Caprino was a double-edged sword. On the one hand, it was a vocal flaw that she kind of needs to consider, let alone conquer, in order to sound way clearer and to also make sure that it doesn't end up becoming so obtrusive. On the other hand, that caprino also served as a sort of vocal effect to highlight Zenta's anxiety, nervousness, and overall youth as a girlish, dreamy young lady who still feels that she cannot let go of the image of the Dutchman, and she just wants to save him, even though she herself is quite naive in her approach. Yes, I still miss that additional oomph found in Leonie Rizanek and that extra body found in Walburga Wegna, or even Birgit Nilsson's completely amazing vocal prowess, considering that she owned the role of Zenta. And it would have been more exciting to hear Elisabeth Taige perform Zenta's ballad Jo ho ho hoi traft ihr das Schiff im Meere an in its original key of A minor, because it would have been cool to hear Elisabeth Taige launch at some high B's while singing that particular aria, and the effect of having Elisabeth Taige singing Zenta's ballad in its original key of A minor would have been just as thrilling, just as exciting, because I've become a lot more accustomed to hearing Zenta's ballad sung in its original key. Just ask the likes of Katarina Legenza, Anya Silja, Jane Eaglin, Sonja Mulek, and Anna Katarina Benke, who managed to accomplish just that in their respective performances. Therefore, I do consider Zenta to be a nice fit for Elisabeth Taige, especially considering that her spinto/dramatic soprano voice managed to be an asset to make sure that she makes a credible performance as this young captain's daughter. And it's not just Zenta that is also a nice fit for Elisabeth Taige, but also Chrysothemis from Elektra and the Empress from Die Frau ohne Schatten, and lest I forget about Freya from Das Rheingold. Those roles are really beneficial for Miss Elisabeth Taige and her overall vocal gifts, let alone theatrical gifts as a singing actress. So overall, the singing tonight was really up to great standards. Leading the helm was Jordan Shanahan's virile, mysterious, and angst-ridden Dutchman, all thanks to his round and exciting Heldenbariton voice that can use a lot more depth and darkness, but is otherwise an exciting instrument that managed to sing over the orchestra and do so with aplomb and do so with credibility, especially as a singing actor. So he has all of my salutes that I could give to him, and he was a laudable performer all the way through. Equally as great were Tobias Kira's lovably gruff Dalant, Robert Watson just growing in baritonal depths as Erik, Matthew Newland's athletic and charming steersman, Lauren Decker's stately Mari, and Elisabeth Taige's gorgeously sung Zenta. All of these 6 singers managed to fulfill their roles exceedingly well, and I do wish them a lot more great vocal development in the right direction so that their voices can last for many years to come. There is a lot more challenges for these 6 singers to overcome, and I will continue to keep on rooting for them. The conducting done by Ivan Repusic is quite nuanced to listen to. Yes, there were times that he dragged. Yes, there were occasions where he and the orchestra just couldn't really see eye to eye, let alone his communication with the singers too. But he was still able to keep the tension in certain moments, although he could use a lot more consistency. And that deficiency in additional consistency was what kind of hurt his conducting tonight, and it was quite the dent to pay for what was otherwise an involving effort. He just needs to make sure that he keeps the tension and make sure that he and the musicians, as well as the singers, keep in close contact with each other. But other than that, he did what he had to do as a conductor, and what more can you expect from the chorus and orchestra of the Deutsche Oper Berlin? Everybody was a pro and everybody was reliable. So overall, with Jordan Shanahan leading the helm as an exciting Dutchman, complete with his Heldenbariton voice and the Heldenbariton repertoire that managed to be his bedrock throughout his entire career, I can certainly salute him for all of his laudable efforts. He led the evening with virility and with emotional investment, both vocally and dramatically, and he had all of my praise, he had all of my salutes, and I can only wish him a lot more great vocal development in the right direction, and also make sure that whatever vocal flaws he has, he can overcome them and he can conquer them with great discipline and ensuring that he covers his chest tones well so that they can sound a lot more open and free every time he sings. And Jordan Shanahan's brand of virility managed to make him lead the helm as a fine Dutchman, especially considering that he had Tobias Kira, Robert Watson, Matthew Newland, Lauren Decker, and Elisabeth Teige by his side. And for those of you who watched Christian Spuck's production of Der Fliegende Holländer at the Deutsche Oper Berlin, what'd you think of it? Did you enjoy Jordan Shanahan as the Dutchman? Did you feel like there was another singer who stole his thunder? Did you also feel that Jordan Shanahan was vocally adept as the Dutchman? What was your favorite moment in terms of Jordan Shanahan's portrayal of this titular hero? Or did you feel that the singing was not really to your liking? Or did you even feel that Jordan Shanahan was not really up to the task of singing the Dutchman? Please let me know in the comments below. Well, that's it for my review of Wagner's Der Fliegende Holländer, starring Jordan Shanahan as the Dutchman. Tune in next time for another review. So until then, good night, everybody.